What the hell is happening? Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood already did. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. Final episode of Nine Perfect Strangers is here, and it is infuriatingly insane. There are a lot of balls that are being juggled in the air coming into this episode. A lot of things have to get tied up and answered in a 50-minute episode. Do they nail them all? Not quite, but there's a lot happening in this. And I think if you've gone on this journey with this show, it could be satisfying, but there are a lot of things that you're just like, I don't know if that is the way to go. This episode definitely gets into some weird thriller aspects. It almost becomes quasi-horror. One of the folks here in the channel responded to the video like they don't know if they should be afraid of this episode if it's a horror. I mean, this series if it's a horror. This episode definitely leans into that horror aspects and thriller aspect a lot more. We start off the episode right where we left off with Masha and Carmel having a conversation, like, yeah, Sasha. We should have known the way this show has gone that it wasn't going to end up in a threatening manner for, although we've gotten threatening texts that have been going to Carmel, and that is, to Masha, and Carmel has said that in this she's responsible for all of those, which explains the little phone in the lamp thing. We thought she was trying to call out, she was actually texting Masha. But Masha forgives her. And it seems like, if nothing else, this episode and this series is talking about moving past pain and or grief. Whether you have to forgive someone, where you have to say goodbye to someone, all of that is sort of what this show encompasses. And so as a series as a whole, this is sort of taking a lot of broken people, bringing them together and sort of fixing them or applying some healing so that they can go back out into the world and live a moderately healthy life. And so that's sort of what this series does, and that's what the season finale wraps up with. So Masha forgives Carmel, but also needs to put her through some more stuff to kind of release the pain that she has and the weight that she has of forgiving herself for shooting Masha. So she calls her babushka about 5 times and sort of rocks her to sleep so that one of her staff members can move her to a water chamber that's kind of been closed. It's if anyone has done one of those hydrotherapy type of things where you're kind of laying in salt water, you can float. I love them. I do them every now and then, but it allows you to sort of just be zen in the moment. It can be claustrophobic if you have claustrophobic, but it also can get to a point where you just feel euphoric and sort of just relief. That's what Masha's going for in there. It seems like Masha is never putting these people in, we'll get to it in a bit, never putting these people into some extreme danger. She's just taking some very unorthodox ways to get there. Mind you, Masha is still shit-faced. She is still drugged out of her mind. So for her to still be coherent enough to kind of go through these processes and still be high leaves a little bit of disbelief for me because the Marconis are completely tripped, and to think they've been high throughout this entire time. So if they're completely gone and Father Napoleon is completely like, I'm having an aneurysm just because some blood's coming out of his nose. I don't know if Masha would be so cognizant to be able to do the things that she's doing, considering this is her first time getting on these drugs. And so that's where a lot of the hang-ups for me in this episode sort of come in. When she gets back to the Marconis, and when she gets back to the Marconis, Lars just sort of let the cat out of the bag, saying like, yo, the person on the bike is her daughter she's trying to get back to, and they kind of have a moment where they confront her and say, you've just been using us. Who are you? And she breaks it down. It's a really well done scene, probably my favorite scene in this particular episode, where she says, I'm you. I'm broken. My child was at my center, and when I lost her, my center got all thrown out of whack. And now I don't know where I'm at. I don't know who I am. But I am you. And she points to Heather, Napoleon, and young Marconi, and they all sort of just have a moment where it seems like they are going to hesitate and resist this meditation, but they lean into it. They sit down and they're like, yeah, she's right. We're all in pain. Everybody here is broken. This, I think, is the way to sort of get us to some point. Lars gets back to the camera and starts recording. If nothing else, I think my biggest issue with this episode is that we build up all these balls, we build up all these climaxes, everything's sort of weighted, it has some tangible weight to it. And then in this episode, because it's the final episode, we got 50 minutes, it all feels too easy to rectify those situations. This is the person that shot you, I forgive you. Yo, you lied to us, this and this. I'm you. Let's sit down and have it. It just, writing wise, I think there needed to be more time where some of the stuff got dealt with and fleshed out a little bit more as opposed to this, and we're out of it. It just feels a little too easy. It still works. It doesn't, like, the story structure isn't incorrect. It's just a little too simple to get to that point. But the Marconis get on their trip. Gets a little dangerous to them. They are, Napoleon starts bleeding from the nose and gets in his mouth and he thinks he's having an aneurysm, but it is getting into the trip and they start seeing their son. And Zach with Zoe and Heather and Napoleon, they all sort of have a moment where I guess they can all see the vision together. No one else can see it, but they can sort of see it together. And they're having a convo with Zach. And Zach is telling them, like, Heather's questioning why did she use the belt that she just bought him? Was that a big F you to her? And Zoe was like, hey, we were fighting. I could see that something was wrong, but we have this game where we play chicken. We can't be the first person to say I'm sorry or speak to the other one. We're just living. I let you live in whatever pain you're going. And Napoleon keeps blaming himself with the alarm clock, which in a weird, terrifying word, the way he starts sort of hearing that clock in his head while he's going through this trip. It all feels tangible, and Zach says, hey, this was an act of it was an irrational act. There is no rhyme or reason. There's no reason. You guys are trying to put a rational concept on something as irrational as suicide. Those things happen in an impromptu moment. And a lot of people, and I feel this is the case with anybody who's dealt with someone who's committed suicide or who's even contemplated suicide, in the moment, that brief moment, if they want to take their life, it's immediate. The majority of those folks, especially the survivors, they'll tell you, in the moment, they are sad that they did it. Like, it was a quick, irrational thought. They wish they had not done it because it's not something they actually wanted to go through. And Zach sort of alludes to that. He's like, none of you did anything wrong. And if I could take this back, I would still be here. I don't want to do this. It was just an irrational thought. And you can't put reasoning behind irrational thought. And so that's what they come to. And in a beautiful way, they say goodbye to their son because they know that this can't be real. They can't keep going back to this. They can't keep putting Napoleon in this type of danger to get to this point. And so this is it. This is their goodbye, and they all sort of say their sweet goodbyes. And I think, if nothing else, people getting past their pain, people forgiving, I think the ability to be able to speak to someone you lost and say goodbye, it hits hard. I can relate to that as someone who's lost somebody who wasn't there when that person transitioned. It is a thing that you selfishly want to do, to not necessarily make amends with yourself, if there was something hanging on, if there was something you always question, you just want to be like, hey, I didn't get to say goodbye. I wish I had that opportunity. And so that's sort of what Marconi's doing. That's sort of what this process that Masha has created does, using psychedelics to get to these points. I still don't know if there's a way that can take enough psychedelics to tangibly hold, feel, and recreate conversations that you're having. More so than anything, I get it if Masha's having it with her child alone, we'll talk about in a second, but when the Marconis work as a trio, it's difficult for me to see all three of them seeing the same person at the same time and hearing the same conversation. That's where I'm like, I don't buy that. That seems weird. I don't believe that. I can believe if somebody's having a one-to-one trip and they're hearing the conversation, but when all of them are sort of connected, it's weird. But it is sort of seeming like they're using Zoe as a medium, so I think she is the person that allows everybody to sort of see and talk to. Because once Zoe gets Masha away from them later, she puts Masha with her child and sort of has that moment. But before we get to that, Francis and Tony decide that they've had enough. They're getting the hell out of there. So they pack their bags and get to going. They're like, nope, I'm done. Don't want to be here anymore. And they head to the garage where they find Jessica and Ben. But all the cars are gone. All the cars have been removed. There's no cars there. People aren't allowed to leave. It's a weird thing because I feel like Masha is doing everything humanly possible to sort of funnel everybody to this one place. But we never really get a resolution on where the cars have gone. They're stolen, and at the end we get a shot of Masha and her child driving away in Ben's car. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. So she just stole their vehicle, and now we'll get to the happy endings that we have at the end. But it's a weird way to sort of code that because she thieved their vehicles. But while they're all at the garage, kind of freaking out over where their cars are, they hear Carmel screaming and trying to get out of the padded room she just can't get out of. And Lars is there now all of a sudden because he's like, I was recording, but they were having an emotional moment that I should not have been privy to. So they all kind of have come together at this moment, and then they start beelining it over to see if they can find out where Carmel is. And Carmel's like in this steel trap room where she can't get out of. There's a funny line that happens between Francis and Tony. Francis is like, can you bust in? And he's like, I'm flattered, but no, the way that they read that, it's perfect. I love it. It gives some type of humility or comedy in the midst of the many types of genres that this episode is trying to have come across. We get into some trippiness, psychedelicness, thriller. It's a bit of a mess or a madness or a mix-up of what this final episode is. But they're trying to get them out of there. They can't. They go to Masha and see that Masha's on a trip. And Masha's close. She's starting to see like snow and bike stuff, but this isn't the time. The team need to pull her away. Like, you got to get Carmel out of there. So she goes with them, meets them there. Carmel comes and is like, hey, I'm trapped in here, I can't get out. Masha opens the door up, lets them all in. She's like, hey, you're fine. Has the phone, like, look, there's no issues. You're fine, you're not trapped. Are you okay? And she's like, yeah, I'm good. And she sort of comes to Masha, and everyone sort of just follows behind her. And she's like, I gotta get back to the Marconis. You guys hang here, and I'll be here a second to hang with you. While she's doing it, she has her phone. She locks the doors behind them and sort of leaves them all in this padded room, which she then tells her coworker, set the fire. Now, here's the thing. That is supposed to be ominous, and you're like, oh my gosh, she's going to murder all these people. But in my brain as a writer, as seeing what she's doing, and just the way that Masha has achieved her life, we already know that what she's doing is a tactic. And so it feels like there's a different way to have gotten there than the way we did, because I never felt that they were any type of danger. And I think that's the sort of the point that you're trying to do. More so, the characters have to feel like they're in danger, and I think that succeeded, and it works. So it's my issue. It was just the way that I never felt like anybody was in actually danger, but it was a good way to sort of cathartic. So these folks all feel like they are about to lose their life, and then start kind of having a revelation of what they would do if this is their life-ending moment, and they never get to get out of this again. And so we sort of go down the line of hearing. We don't really get to hear Tony's because he's sort of leading the talk around. But Lars, like, I would forgive and get back with my guy, and we would have a baby. Ben wants to work. Like, he's earned all this money. He's got all this money, but he didn't earn it, and he likes to go wake up every day and have a purpose and go to work and meet new people and meet weirdos like the folks that he's met here. Jessica wants to be a boss, and she wants to have people's thoughts of her not matter anymore. Carmel wants to forgive, and Frances is just sort of gratified. She's showing gratitude and like an appreciation, and sort of the lights just go off, and they think that's the end. And we leave them there until the police arrive, actually, which we'll get to in a moment. But Masha does finally have that trip with Zoe's help. I think Zoe's been used as the medium here. And she finally gets to see her daughter, and they just sort of hug and sort of recreate the moment that she had when she had her before the police came, when she was actually in the accident. She holds her in this flower field of snow and just rocks her. And I think it sort of recreates that moment where she gets to say goodbye to her young one that she didn't get to say because she was already gone by that point. She now gets to get that release. But Yao does eventually show up to the padded room with everybody on fire and sort of explains to them that you guys were never in danger. Masha would never put you in danger. This was a healing tactic to sort of get you guys to reveal what your truest sense and what you really want to be doing with your life. And now maybe you should go do that. And they walk over to see Masha in the middle of the fields, rocking. And Francis asks her, "Did you get what you came for? Did you get what you needed?" No, he did. It was just sort of a release and a relief of saying goodbye to a young one. And they all don't really appreciate all the tactics that Masha has used to get to this point, but they understand it and they are all appreciative. So when the cops start asking them questions, some lie. Francis is like, I locked myself with that. I got big thumbs. My bad. It's on me. Jessica and Jessica's sort of telling the truth, but in a roundabout way and not really putting it all out there. And like, I can't find my car, but they drugged us. Not to our own volition. Well, me, I wanted to be drugged. Ben didn't, but then he did. Like the way she's explaining it, they're like, wait, what? All of them sort of explain in this roundabout way that basically no one's getting into trouble. Another easy out. Like no one's going to jail for drugging, essentially holding people captive, and attempted murder in Carmel's place. I don't know how the statute of limitations works on that, but it's all simple, easy, and happy. There's a bow on it, and then we see Francis and Tony go out to dinner. It looks like that happens directly after they get out of Tranquillum, and they're having a dinner and they're ordering burgers and drinks and ice cream sundae. I get you, Tony. You're my spirit. I get that. But and then she asks for a pad, and this is where it becomes unclear, and this is where I don't know. I wish they would choose a path and sort of go with it. I can't tell if this is Francis writing it and it being true, or if this is all actually happening and they keep jumping from time like to the future and the past, because that seems to be present, but then we get future shots of Francis and Tony fine with a dog and his two kids that he has. They're all sort of living together and being in a relationship, being a family, and that's the sense of what Francis wanted and Tony. Ben and Jessica are running Tranquillum, which is cool, because Jessica gets to be her boss that she wanted, and Ben gets to go to work and meet all crazy and weird people. I don't know how much I trust Jessica helping and trying to fix these folks, but hey, that works. Lars gets his baby with his man. They're back, and they got a little baby boy there. And Carmel is now in charge of a self-help group and talking about forgiveness. Also, not entirely sure that she's the person that I would want to do that, but it seems like they have all sort of come together in this group. Delilah and Yao also have started a company and are doing like a shipping company, if you will. But they all come together and they are in good hands, and they all seem to sort of have this happy bow put on it. And I think of all the things with this series, I think the series does a great job of putting these characters, these broken characters, and going through these character beats. And then it gets into these weird, supernatural, psychedelic, high-end thriller modes that I don't think it ever finds its way back to a center, a lot like Masha, to kind of tell the story that they're going to tell. And I think coming into this episode, there are so many balls in the air. They tried to tie them all up, and then we put this weird, happy bow on them that didn't feel genuine to what the rest of the show brought. Some of it might be because I watched White Lotus like right before I saw this, and White Lotus, while bringing not so much broken, but a bunch of people to an island together and to Clue, there is a lot more intrigue and dirtiness left on how they resolve. It's sort of like a vicious cycle, and you kind of see people trying to just get through. This one feels like everyone sort of gets that happy ending and that cleanliness, although it seems like Masha might still be she wrote a book, but she seems like she still might sort of be on that psychedelic high because she's still riding in a stolen Lamborghini, but I guess Ben and Jessica don't need it anymore now that they're running Tranquillum, but that's another felony or another charge that she's got. But she seems to still be on the psychedelic because she's still seeing her kid. And so I think while everybody else seems to be sort of clean, helped, and good and moving on with their life, Masha seems to be still hanging on, which gives that little slight check mark of like maybe not everything is good. So the person who's helped fix everyone is still holding on. The Marconis are willing to let go of Zach. They know that they have to say goodbye. She sort of says goodbye, but in a roundabout way, it's still probably going back and forth to meeting her. Or that could have just been an image to say, show's done, yay. But it doesn't play that way. And so that's where I think it just, the way this all ends gets a little muddy and is not probably as clean as I would like it to be. But if you want a bow and a happy ending, then I think the series succeeds at that and telling some pretty good character moments and character beats about grief. And as somebody who's dealt with grief, and people I'm sure all of you have in some way or another dealt with grief or pain, if nothing else, what would you do to achieve the ability to say goodbye to someone you lost? Is sort of the overarching question. And then would you live? What would you do, and how would you get out of that rut that we all sort of get in when something like that affects us? Good show. Probably not my favorite of the Nicole Kidman, David E. Kelly trio of shows, but it's really well done. I think it's just a lot more of a slow moving process than The Undoing. Big Little Lies is probably a slower burn, but I think they're more straightforward of a story, where this gets a little wonky with all the psychedelics and different genres that are merged in. But what did you guys think of the series as a whole, this episode, the finale? Go ahead and leave me your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name. It's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any other place podcasts. We're there. But like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.